Torb. Haven't got the live thing up yet.
Hello. You want a treat? You want a treat? Boy, you come for it. Yeah, yeah. Treat time. I got my cake at dinner. Mummy did. Yeah, good job doing that. Meow! Come on. Good girl. Here you go. There you go. It's still warm out there.
I know. Nino.
Oh, well. Go. Where you going? There you go. Here. There. Good girl. Good girl.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone.
Hey?
Just saying hello. There are two people. I know there is one that's in the bushes, and I know who that is. Coming down from my feet back on the ground.
are dead and make a phone call and say, yes, everything's fine.
But hide the truth.
We do not understand why our daughter has been murdered.
I didn't think there was no person on this earth could do that to a child.
Tonight, crocodile tears.
Help find whoever shot my husband. Please come forward.
The killers caught in the spotlight. The killers trapped in a web of their own deceit.
How you could possibly move about all day long knowing that evening you've planned to murder someone.
It was a unique case, and one that would remain a mystery for 8 years. It would finally be solved in an unprecedented sting by one woman's determination and a detective who was prepared to take the biggest gamble of his career.
Cirencester?
They got out of a plastic bag down on the water in Cirencester.
A bag? Oh, I bet they've done her fingerprints already.
It's been a long time, actually.
It doesn't matter.
What, in water?
It doesn't matter. If it's her, it's her.
It's not particularly unusual in this day and age for people to go missing. It is unusual for a married woman with 2 young children to go missing.
November 1992, and 30-year-old businesswoman Rhonda Kay was reported missing from her family home in Newbury, Berkshire. She lived there with her husband Nick and their 2 children aged 2 and 6. The couple ran their own baby wear business from home and took in lodgers for extra money. Rhonda seemed to have everything going for her. Her disappearance was totally out of character. Police were baffled.
It just didn't sound right to us that she should suddenly disappear in the morning. Her car was left behind, all her clothes was left behind. The bank accounts and so on hadn't been interfered with.
Police have searched the canal at the back of the Kay's home, as well as the house itself and the surrounding area.
A month into the investigation, and the hunt for Rhonda had failed to unearth any new evidence. There was no body and no new sightings.
She's taken no money from her bank, and even her toothbrush is in place.
All the indications were that Rhonda Kay had either harmed herself or somebody had harmed her.
With the case at a dead end, police called a press conference in the hope of uncovering fresh leads. They asked Rhonda's husband Nick and her sister Rochelle to help with the appeal.
And every now and then the kids ask me where she is, and I just want to be able to tell the kids she's gone away and she's safe and know that it's the truth.
Every night I can come up with another story. I mean, it's so difficult for me to be able to assess what's happened to her or what she's done.
During the police investigation, it emerged that there had been trouble at the family home. 2 days before she went missing, Rhonda had found her husband Nick in bed with their lodger, Karen Scott, and had asked her to leave. It was the second time Rhonda had caught Nick having an affair, and the next day she consulted a solicitor about divorcing him.
The last time I spoke to her was she was waiting for Nick to come home from work, and she said her words to me were that she was going to have it out with him and ask him to leave.
Rochelle was surprised when she called the house the next morning.
He told me that he had gone to bed, and in the morning when he woke up to give her a cup of tea, she was gone.
The separation, she knows the separation is definite, and I know the separation is definite, but I just, for the kids' sake, I just want her to let someone know that she is safe.
He was very obliging and cooperative and prepared to do anything he could to assist. He maintained his version of events that at any moment now it was most likely that Rhonda Kay was going to walk back through the door.
But police were beginning to have their doubts about Nicholas Kay.
Which question?
There was a good deal of suspicion that Rhonda Kay had been killed, and of course Nicholas Kay, owing to the circumstances of her disappearance, Nicholas Kay would have had to have been the prime suspect.
Which question?
Kay was in for a surprise. This was going to be a press conference with a sting in the tail. Among the gathered journalists was Roger Sawyer, who worked for a local news agency.
Normally when you go to a news conference like that, you'll have a little briefing with the police beforehand, and they'll tell you what the situation is, sometimes they'll explain to you that the relatives are extremely upset and they'll want you to be quite gentle with them because they're just appealing for information. It was a bit different with this one because we had the informal briefing with the police beforehand. There was none of that. In fact, almost the opposite. I remember asking the officer, is it all right if I ask him if he killed her? And he said, you can ask him what you like.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2 more questions and then it ends. Roger.
I have to ask you the question, Nick. Have you killed your wife?
Rhonda Kay had mysteriously disappeared from her family home in Newbury, Berkshire. The finger of suspicion was pointing at her husband.
2 more questions and then it ends.
At a press conference, a journalist was given the go-ahead to ask the question everyone wanted answered.
You killed your wife.
What do you think?
I was a bit surprised by that, but I just asked him then, please answer the question.
No, I have not killed my wife.
I was really pleased that that particular question did come out because it was one of the questions that I wanted to ask myself.
I didn't expect the answer that he gave. I would have liked a much more sincere and concerned answer. I think a lot of people watching that interview would have expected to see some genuine signs of distress on his part.
What do you think?
And his response, to me, answered the question of his guilt. And the anger within me just brewed to such a degree that I just felt that I was going to explode.
I came out of it thereafter feeling much the same as when I went into it. I suspected that she had been murdered, and I felt it was only a matter of time before we found her body.
The appeal may have reinforced people's suspicions, but it brought forward no witnesses or new leads. There was simply nothing for the police to work on. Kay was free to go. He returned home to the house that he had shared with his wife, but now shared with his lover, Karen Scott. In fact, it would emerge that she had returned to the house just 2 days after Rhonda went missing, and that Rhonda's possessions had been sold or burnt.
I understood very clearly that Rhonda was never going to come back.
Kay later married Karen Scott.
It would be good news to hear. We've really had a belly full of all this, to be honest.
With no body and no evidence, the investigation into Rhonda's disappearance went cold. For 7 years, there were no sightings of Rhonda. Rochelle was battling to keep the investigation alive, but despite routine police reviews, the case had come to nothing.
As the years rolled by, I had to resign myself to the fact that there was a possibility that she may never be found.
But things were about to change. Autumn 1999, and Rhonda's case was reviewed by Detective Superintendent Trevor Davis.
When I first reviewed the case, I looked at likely suspects. And of course, who was the person with motive? Nicholas Kay. Who was the person with opportunity? Nicholas Kay. And if you put those together with the circumstances that prevailed at the time, in other words, he'd just been discovered for the second time having an affair in quite a reasonably short period of time, he had to become the major suspect.
He assured me that it would be his last major case before he retired, and that he would do everything in his power to get me the answers that I so desperately needed.
There was no forensic evidence that had come to light that was going to implicate Nicholas Kay, and therefore my conclusion was that if we were going to get to the bottom of Rhonda's disappearance, then it had to come from him, and probably him alone.
Davis came up with a groundbreaking plan. The police had recently been given new powers to bug private homes if there was no other way of obtaining evidence. He was given the official go-ahead to mount a covert surveillance operation on Kay's home. Bugs were planted in the kitchen, bedroom and bathroom. It was an extraordinary gamble.
It may well have been within the family that they never ever spoke about it, so it needed a catalyst to bring that to the fore.
That catalyst would be Rochelle. Davis scripted a phone call during which Rochelle would tell Kay that remains had been found. She would give the minimum amount of information in the hope that anything Kay said would incriminate him.
I had to make him believe that it was me speaking normally, and convince him that a body had been found. And the pressure of knowing that my words were so important was tremendous.
It was a high-risk strategy. They had to get it right first time. There would be no second chances. Rochelle would make the call to Kay, but not engage in conversation. The police would then monitor the reaction between him and his wife, Karen.
Hello, Nick. It's Rochelle. The police have been down to see me. They found some remains and have taken some DNA samples. I hope they get you this time, you bastard.
What the surveillance team were about to hear was dynamite.
What?
That was Rochelle.
What?
That was Rochelle.
What did she say? Hold on a minute.
Got her out of the plastic bag down on the water in Cirencester.
A bag? Oh, I bet they've done her fingerprints already.
It's been down there a long time.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it'll all be circumstantial though, won't it?
Oh, God.
I can't take this.
Yes, but putting it in a plastic bag looks suspicious. If they look, in the bottom of the river there's pebbles. The first thing you should have discussed it with me. I mean, I don't think you're telling me the truth. I don't think you use gloves.
Why wouldn't I use gloves?
It became apparent to me that I was actually listening to a confession from his own mouth.
You don't know it. They could have found slight forensic evidence in the van. They could have found slight forensic evidence on the walls in the bedroom as well.
No.
Have you heard about that light that picks up?
You know, I mean, I had a hell of a job getting the carpet sorted. You know, that Hoover, that thing, I must have been on it for over an hour. I must have done all of it.
As the information came out about the likelihood of what had happened to Rhonda, the evidence was getting stronger and stronger.
Bloody Rochelle.
Sorry?
Bloody, bloody, bloody Rochelle.
After 48 hours, police felt that at last they had enough evidence to arrest Kay.
Nicholas Kay said that he knew that the house had been bugged, and that he said certain things as a joke, meant for the police, who he knew were listening. That was an absolute nonsense. When we looked at the tapes overall, it was more than evident that it was no joke.
Nicholas Kay was charged with the murder of his wife, Rhonda. There was no evidence to implicate his current wife, Karen. In the recorded conversations, there were references to a body in water near Cirencester. Police divers searched local gravel pits, but found nothing. In a 30-square-mile area, the chances of ever finding Rhonda's body are remote. With no body or forensic evidence, for the first time ever, a whole case would depend entirely on taped evidence. Kay continued to maintain his innocence, but the recordings were to seal his fate. However, possibly influenced by the fact that no body had ever been found, the jury returned a surprise verdict of manslaughter, not murder. He was jailed for 6 years.
He could quite easily have gone to the courts like everyone else and got a divorce. And to take somebody's life under these circumstances is absolutely unacceptable, and he couldn't be allowed to take those dark secrets behind closed doors and keep them there.
And every now and then the kids ask me where she is, and I just want to be able to tell the kids she's gone away and she's safe, and know that it's the truth.
He knew that there was no way that a person can come back from the dead and make a phone call and say, yes, everything's fine. He just did it for the cameras and to get a sympathy vote.
You killed your wife.
What do you think?
Just answer the question.
No, I haven't killed her.
There are more than 800 murders a year in Britain, and every year there are dozens of police press appeals. But in the last decade alone, there have been at least 17 cases of killers crying crocodile tears. Some people, like Vincent Shilton, even staged their own media appeals.
Come home. Or if you don't want to come home, just phone somebody. Just let us know you're all right.
For the watching public, it was an emotional plea for the safe return of his missing girlfriend, 23-year-old Lisa Blunt, the mother of 4 young children. But Shilton was lying. He'd already killed Lisa in a drunken brawl and taken her body to a nearby wood, where he'd soaked it in petrol and set it alight.
Just let us know you're all right.
But police arrested Shilton and he confessed. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 8 years. Mitchell Quay went one step further and mounted his own media campaign when his wife and the mother of 2 young children disappeared.
One day, either Lindsay's going to walk into a police station or someone's going to see Lindsay.
Quay was the #1 suspect, but publicly protested his innocence, even appearing on This Morning.
Obviously, the question has to be put, and I know what your answer's going to be, but, I mean, did you kill her?
No. No, I just wish someone had listened to me. No one has listened to me since this has begun.
After 15 months,
We will also examine accusations that a nurse in Texas named Ethel Nation sold dozens of babies to adoptive parents. 2 of those infants, who are now adults, would like your help to find their natural parents. And finally, with Halloween almost upon us, 2 tales of things that go bump in the night. During the Civil War, this building was an important outpost for the Union Army. Today it is a museum. Many employees believe some of the old soldiers never left. This building, an upscale restaurant known as the Moss Beach Distillery, also has a spectacular and intriguing past. Legend has it that during the Roaring '20s, it was a hotbed for loose women, bathtub gin, racketeering, and mobsters. Over the years, eyewitnesses recount a series of strange happenings right here in the distillery. Eerie sights and sounds that, no matter how hard you try, cannot be explained. Some believe that the ghosts of the Roaring '20s are still here today, brewing up spirited mischief to make a fascinating and chilling unsolved mystery. Moss Beach is a lonely, windswept cove which lies 20 miles south of San Francisco. The Moss Beach Distillery is perched on a bluff overlooking the cove. The restaurant's name pays homage to the building's history. During the heady days of Prohibition, it was a notorious speakeasy. In recent years, all manner of strange goings-on have been reported at the Moss Beach Distillery. Waitresses swear that cold winds swirl through the dining room when no windows or doors are open. One of the former owners claims she has seen objects fly through the air and doors locked mysteriously of their own accord. At last count, as many as 5 different ghosts have been reported lurking in and around this restaurant. Now, I've been here all day and I haven't seen a single ghost. But over the years, a lot of other people have, or say they have. And since it's almost Halloween, the rest of us should at least try to keep an open mind. According to local legend, all this ghostly business began some 70 years ago with a beautiful lady in blue. The Roaring '20s, flappers, fast living, illegal booze.
Hey, Eddie, tell those punks to get the lid out.
Frank's Roadhouse, the speakeasy at Moss Beach, was a favorite jumping-off point for bootleggers.
Gentlemen, the best whiskey money can buy.
fresh off the bone. Frank's was also the setting for a legendary love triangle. The lady was beautiful. She always wore blue. The piano player had eyes only for her, but their romance was conducted in secret because the lady in blue belonged to someone else. The lovers communicated in code, a silent language in which the lift of an eyebrow spoke volumes. The lady's husband was a bootlegger, and that night she made a serious mistake. Unaware that he would soon arrive, she signaled the piano player to meet her on the beach. Moss Beach was a bootlegger's haven, isolated and sheltered under a cliff just outside the speakeasy. When the lady's husband found out she had left Frank's Roadhouse, he made his way to the cove and frantically questioned his cronies.
Hey, Mick, keep it in the bottle.
Suddenly, the bootlegger saw his wife with the piano player and went mad with jealousy.
Oh, sorry, not sorry.
Hey, evening, Max.
Very bad
No,
Eddie.
Lucy, no, relax. Hey,
do that to me.
I tell you, relax.
A knife flashed. A gun was drawn.
Blow your brains out.
The lady threw herself between the two men she loved.
Eddie! Oh!
When the struggle was over, the beautiful lady in blue lay lifeless, victim of her lover's dagger, or so it is said. Some will deny that she ever existed, but others will swear that her ghost haunts Moss Beach to this very day. Believers claim that just as the Blue Lady once held court inside the speakeasy, her spirit now pervades the restaurant, breathing a chill wind down the necks of women she sees as rivals. Moreover, some employees swear that she calls out their names seductively when they are all alone in the dining room.
She's mischievous. A lot of pranks will happen, a lot of things will go on, but I don't think that any of it is malicious. I don't think that anything is supposed to be hair-raisings and you running out of a building or anything else like that. She's good. She seems to be a kind soul, nice spirit.
It just still sort of amazes me that she still is there and still playing tricks on people. You know, every time I come back and talk to someone, they give me the list of all the things that she's been doing.
When Pat and Dave Andrews owned the Moss Beach Distillery, their family lived on the ground floor. They say the Blue Lady seemed to delight in locking them out of their rooms. Pat also says that the Blue Lady liked to play other tricks, especially late at night when Pat was all alone in the restaurant office.
My checkbook lifted right off the shelf above my head and sailed around, kind of slowly around in this small room. And I just told her to put it back, and it went right back onto the shelf.
I was a total skeptic. Couldn't have been more skeptical than, it would be impossible to be more skeptical than I was. And I just didn't believe in it. And then as time went on, the things that happened, you know, totally brought me around to the point of view that it is here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It happened.
On the cliff outside the restaurant, some neighborhood children once claimed they saw the Blue Lady. But she seemed to be a very different kind of ghost. Not the playful spirit who dwelled indoors, but one with a somber demeanor, concerned for the children's safety.
Children, please listen. Go back. Go away. It's dangerous. Please. Listen. Hurry.
The housekeeper of one of the restaurant employees believes she has met the same spirit, and that it is definitely not the two-timing flapper of popular legend.
First time I see the Blue Lady is one night. I am very sick. I have cold, I have fever. Yeah, I see one person in the side in my bed.
¿Tú eres Consuelo?
Sí, yo soy Consuelo.
Quiero hablar contigo porque tú tienes algo mío.
No sé, no tengo nada tuyo.
Estoy hablando de mi música.
The mysterious Blue Lady would soon reappear, this time just after Consuela had finished showering. She claims that once again, the spirit asked for her music and then revealed her name.
Mi nombre es Almarie.
The name Alma Reed conjured a dim memory from Consuela's childhood. When she was 10 years old, Consuela's father had given her sheet music written by one of his close friends, Ricardo Palmarin, a famous Mexican musician. The song was titled Peregrina. It was dedicated to Ricardo's beloved. Her name was Alma Reed. According to Consuela, Alma Reed and Ricardo Palmarin were star-crossed lovers. Alma was already married to another man when she fell in love with a handsome musician. Legend has it that in 1927, she walked into the sea, preferring death to life without her beloved Ricardo. Some say she drowned herself off the Northern California coast, not far from Moss Beach.
I became involved with the Blue Lady.
Sylvia Brown has a national reputation as a psychic. She has worked with the police on many unsolved criminal cases. In 1992, the owner of the Moss Beach Distillery asked her to find out just who the Blue Lady was.
And I said, oh, I have more things to do than to go ghost chasing. But I said, what the heck? So after I got up here, I walked in and said, oh my God, there is a ghost here. And I'm getting the name Mary Ann or Mary Ellen Morley. And she seems to be swathed all in sort of like a hat, blue.
The restaurant employees were surprised when Sylvia came up with a totally new identity for the Blue Lady.
Maybe I'd say 26, maybe 27.
Sylvia went on to say that Mary Ellen Morley had been killed by crushing blows to the chest and head.
But her demeanor seems...
We took that information, went over to the San Mateo County Vital Statistics and researched documentation between 1910 and 1930, and in fact came up with a name that Sylvia Brown had mentioned during dinner, Mary Ellen Morley.
Jennifer Towner and Jan Mucklestone, another restaurant employee, dug through the archives and made an eerie discovery. Mary Ellen Morley's maiden name was Reed, and in an astounding coincidence, she had a sister named Alma.
This is all checking out. This is just incredible.
Jennifer and Jan were also intrigued by the newspaper accounts of Mary Ellen Morley's death.
When she was killed, it made front page news in the Redwood City Standard as well as the Times Gazette, and so it was really chilling when I came upon that, because all of a sudden she became very real.
Mary Ellen Morley lived in Redwood City, California, near the San Francisco Bay. On the day of her death, Mary Ellen and her husband Frederick had driven north to visit her mother's grave. The cemetery was 15 miles from the Moss Beach Distillery. Returning home on the Bayshore Highway that same night, Frederick lost control of his automobile. It overturned, and Mary Ellen was trapped in the wreckage.
It's heavy. Get it off me, please.
With her last last breath, she asked Frederick to take care of their 3-year-old son,
How
Jack.
are you doing? I was about to say the same thing. I'm okay. How are you?
When Frederick Morley heard a car, he frantically ran for help. But in the end, he could do nothing to save his wife. The injuries she suffered were crushing blows to the chest and head, the exact injuries described by Sylvia Brown.
You say that you're very tired.
The owner of the distillery called Sylvia Brown back to the restaurant for a seance.
Because you've been walking
Yeah,
so
I'm good.
long.
We're good.
So cold, so tired.
Sylvia claimed that Mary Ellen Morley's spirit was weary from searching for Jack, her son.
Hannah Elder.
Incredibly, Sylvia also says she saw 3 other spirits with Mary Ellen. A beautiful blonde named Anna Philbrick, her dashing lover, John Cantina, and Hannah Elder, a Mennonite woman. As the seance came to an end, Sylvia said Mary Ellen warned there would soon be a fire at the restaurant.
Well, thank you.
4 or 5 days later, after this, we had a fire here in the restaurant. We had to
It's hard
close
to
the
figure out
restaurant
what to say.
temporarily. And that was really eerie. That was kind of scary.
I've moved from a 1 on a scale of 10 of belief to somewhere in the neighborhood of an 8, I would say, and a 10 with regard to my Blue Lady. I'm convinced she's here.
Does the spirit of a beautiful Blue Lady really haunt the Moss Beach Distillery? If so,
But all I'm going to say is that I'm thinking of
most
it
people
anyway.
now believe she is Mary Ellen Morley, the young mother who died in a tragic car accident. Others swear that the Blue Lady is Alma Reed, the ill-fated lover of her
But you
colleague
know
Paul
already.
Marine. A few still hold with the original legend of the beautiful flapper who romanced a piano player at Frank's Roadhouse. Perhaps all 3 women haunt Moss Beach. Perhaps the Moss Beach Distillery is not only a watering hole for humans, but a gathering place for spirits as well. When we return, a tale of a haunting from a different era. Some say that spirits from a civil war have taken up residence in the Drum Barracks Museum. On April 12, 1861, the first tragic shots of the American Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter, South Carolina. Over the next 4 years, the battle raged along a 1,000-mile front. Though most of the fighting took place in the southern states, the Union war effort eventually spread across the country, all the way to Wilmington, California. In 1862, a military installation was established on 60 acres overlooking Los Angeles Harbor. Christened the Drum Barracks after an obscure lieutenant colonel, the facility was a key center for training and processing troops. By the end of the war, nearly half of California's 17,000 Union volunteers had passed through the barracks. Today, all that remains of the outpost is a single building which now houses a modest museum and some very unlikely tour guides.
I don't call them ghosts, or I don't call them hauntings usually. What I do believe in is we call them spirits.
It's a comfortable feeling. They don't bother me. And I'm very comfortable here with them.
You can lock the rooms at night. I do. I make a check, in fact, very religiously. I check all the rooms. They're locked, the lights are off, the shades are down.
No,
And you
it's
come here
very
at 8
difficult,
o'clock in the
this
morning,
one.
And the light in the parlor jolly well might be on, and then again it might not.
I'm
but the
getting there
shades may be on.
slowly. It's just a lot of blurry
In 1986, Marge O'Brien was
pieces.
hired to
I'm just
revitalize
taking
the
my
Drum
time.
The museum had fallen into disrepair, despite being declared a historic landmark in 1963.
It was very dark, very sad feeling as you walk through. And it was just kind of a building, just kind of standing here saying, help me.
Over the next few months, Marge and a team of craftsmen and volunteers worked diligently to overhaul the museum. The officers' lounge was faithfully restored, and new displays were installed. The old building was coming back to life, in more ways than one.
I'm sitting
Hey,
in my
Ray
office doing the proverbial paperwork, and something will take my attention. Either a window will rattle, the roses will hit against the window, something.
Oh, she's not done
possibly,
yet.
But something attracts me to the fact that I should be checking something.
What's the matter, baby? Hey?
I will walk over to the parlor. 9 chances out of 10 when I have this feeling and I open the door, more likely than not the lights on the table are on. Most times, I will walk up the stairs and check the gun room. Very often, that too has the lights on and the window blinds open, even though they have been closed and down. Because the rule here is that after every tour, you pull the shades down, turn off the light, and lock the door.
Never thought much about ghosts. I've never inquired about it, never tried to speak to the dead, never got involved. Even when I first came here, I took it very lightly.
Forrest Neal was always a skeptic when it came to ghosts and the like, until the summer of 1989.
It was on a Monday morning, museum being closed. I'm here by myself.
Hey, don't bite me.
I heard someone
Hello.
walking in one of the hallways.
Oh, dear.
As it continued, I walked out from my door looking down the stairway. I proceeded down, knowing that someone was probably in the gift shop hiding, waiting for me to leave.
He's getting there. Building up.
As
Slow,
I went in
but
the gift shop,
it's not an easy one, that, because it's an old one from like the 1950s.
when I opened the bathroom, I expected for something to happen. And there was no one in the bathroom. And since then, I've become pretty much a believer.
Don't you dare.
In the gun room.
All right,
now.
Dusting.
Come on.
Yasmin works with volunteer groups who assist in the museum's upkeep. In 1991, she too began to believe that the drum barracks might in fact be haunted.
I put down the blinds and turned off the light and locked the room and left. Came downstairs and left the building. There was nobody around.
You will be back Friday, won't you?
Yeah, sure. What time?
10:30. The silver needs polishing.
Okay, we'll do that. When I looked up, I saw the blind and the window that we were working went up really slow. Did you just see that?
What?
The blind went up by itself. It gave me the impression as if someone was holding it, someone was doing it.
To me, a ghost was like Casper the Friendly Ghost or some movie or something, I guess, one doesn't believe it until they actually are really convinced.
Fred Duran is an exterminator for the
Okay,
city of
we're
Los Angeles,
fans.
and the
See
museum
you
is among
later.
his regular stops. On one visit in particular, Fred got all the convincing he needed.
As I got into the kitchen that morning,
Hi,
I
Ruth
heard some
Ann,
footsteps
take care.
behind me, and I thought it was the caretaker. And I didn't pay any attention to it.
Have you seen him?
No.
As I turned around, there was this guy there, and I thought it was kind of odd because he was in a Civil War outfit, and I thought it was the caretaker that lived there. So as I was going out towards, the front of the building to go out towards my vehicle, then I saw the caretaker there and the workmen also, and I just asked him. I said, hey, the guy that lives here takes his job seriously.
Baby did not.
They said, you saw the captain's ghost. And I said, oh, come on, guys. And they said, no, you actually saw the captain's ghost.
If Fred said he saw it, he saw it. I have no doubts in that. Fred's a very honest man. My reaction is, I wonder
you look a
why,
bit there, aren't you?
at this point, what the reason
That's
was
all
at
right.
this point in time, why he had to come now, and why to Fred.
Marge O'Brien became determined to find out who or what had taken up residence in the drum barracks. In 1991, she asked Barbara Connor,
You're doing a
an
hell of a lot better than I
internationally
would have done with
recognized
it.
psychic, to visit the museum.
Eh?
She says we seem to have some creaks and groans, and
Yeah, but
I thought,
don't forget,
right
colour
away
blind on
mentally,
green.
I thought to myself,
The
oh,
green
it's
and
an old
black looks
house,
the
it's
same
just
to me.
settling. And I said, well, I've never done it before, but sure, I'd like to come out. So we came out and started to go through the barracks.
Often when I come in, the light is on.
According to Barbara Connor, the drum barracks was teeming with ghostly activity. In the officers' lounge, she claims to have encountered several spirits.
That nice. You
Some
better
were
eat
playing
it.
cards,
Don't just drink the gravy off it.
and others stood by the window, peering through the curtains.
Eat it.
But one
Go
phantom
on,
seemed
eat
more
it.
forceful than the rest.
He looked at me and he says, I want this chair closer to the fireplace because I'm cold.
You did it.
And I was telling Marge, I said, this gentleman that's sitting in this chair here has a foot that is, his boot is too tight for him.
What was interesting is my research showed that Colonel Curtis, who was the commander here the longest, had frostbitten his left foot when he was fighting Indians up in Washington. Right around the ankle, above where the nerve endings were, was a great deal of pain, which he suffered much of his life. He would wear a boot that was a size smaller so that he could have more control of that foot, and he dragged it. There is no way Barbara could have known that when she walked into the room. I had just started to uncover this research.
Upstairs, Barbara Connor continued to have visions which seemed to explain some of the strange noises Marge and the staff had grown familiar with.
I told Marge, I said, there's a little boy here, and he's throwing the ball up against the wall. And she goes, that's what that is. And I go, what? She says, well, we've heard this thump, 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 and we couldn't figure out what it is. And I said, well, that's it. He's throwing this ball up against the wall. And I said, if you want him to stop, just tell him to stop, and he'll stop.
As the tour came to an end, Barbara Connor says she saw the specters of Colonel Curtis and his officers in a planning session.
The colonel was standing there at the table, and when we came in, he looked at us, then all of a sudden he started looking at a box over on the side, like he left what he was doing and went over and started digging in this box, and he turned to me and mentally projected, he wants his award. He wants the award. He's trying to find an award. And I said, what award? And he says, I have an award. I want my award, and I want it on that wall.
Well, I had never heard of a plaque before, and I don't remember anything ever hanging in that storage room. But I discovered later that when he left Washington, that Colonel Curtis did receive an award for his work with the Indians up there. And possibly that could have been the plaque.
Commander Curtis, gentlemen, it's time to go home. Lights out. If you want them back on, that's fine with me. I believe that there's something here. People ask me, have I seen it? No, I haven't seen it, and apparently they don't talk to me. And if I'm wrong in talking to spirits, well, then I'm wrong, because I do. I've become accustomed to them.
I'm pleased that they're here, if indeed they are, because it means someone with a longer span here is going to take care of this place, and it will be taken care of.
Do the long-dead spirits of the Civil War still roam the drum barracks? At this point, the museum staff has little doubt. Skeptics might say they have overactive imaginations, or perhaps a fanatic reverence for the past. But those who've experienced the unguided tour of the museum believe it is nothing less than a case of living history. When we return, A young man and woman sold as infants by a nurse in Texas are searching for their natural mothers. These three infants were all born in San Antonio, Texas between 1959 and 1966. What they have in common is a connection to an opportunistic woman. A woman who, according to some, ran a secret but profitable business in which she sold babies for more than 20 years. That questionable enterprise first came to light when the mother of this infant began looking for her. In November of 1959, 18-year-old Dailene Zolikoff was alone, scared, and 7 months pregnant. She was taken in by a nurse in San Antonio named Ethel Nation. On January 6, 1960, Dailene gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Almost immediately, Ethel whisked the infant away.
Ethel stole my baby. And I searched, I tried everything in San Antone. I talked to a lawyer. Ethel wouldn't help me. I just couldn't find my baby.
Ethel Nation always denied that she had anything to do with the disappearance of Dailene's baby. But in 1968, Dailene found a photograph of her daughter in Ethel's house. It took another 15 years of searching before Dailene and her daughter were reunited on national television.
When I first saw my daughter, she looked beautiful. And she smiled. And I was just overjoyed. It was so beautiful to finally, after all these years, I finally found her.
While the story of Dailene Zolikoff and her daughter has a happy ending, the stories of 2 other young people who were sold by Ethel Nation are far from over. Perhaps someone in our audience tonight can help unlock the secrets of their past. Scott Mers was born in San Antonio in 1965. His adoptive parents were unable to have children and paid Ethel Nation $1,200 for Scott. Scott grew up knowing he had been adopted. When he was 10, he began to have an odd recurring dream which seemed to be about the mother he never knew and perhaps the place where he was born.
I remember walking through the main doorway. I remember feeling very cold in this place. I felt like very, very horrible things went on there. There was a table, and beside this table, there was a man in a green robe and a lady dressed in white. I don't know what they were doing there. When I woke up almost screaming. I mean, I was really, really scared.
He said, I was born in that room. I was born in that room. And he said, I feel like my birth mother was having a rough time in her life, and for some reason I felt very drawn to her, almost like she was calling me.
When Scott was 18, he and his adopted mother Mary began an intensive search for his natural mother. Scott's adoption records reveal few clues, so he and Mary paid a visit to Ethel Nation.
She seemed really nice. She seemed like she wanted to help. Then, as the times grew on, it got worse and worse and worse.
Miss Nation, I just need to ask you a few questions.
Scott and Mary visited Ethel on 6 occasions. With each visit, Ethel changed her story. At various times, she told Scott he had been born in 3 different hospitals, but none of them had his birth records on file.
They have no record of my being born there.
Who said anything about Santa Rosa?
You did.
You must be mistaken. I never mentioned Santa Rosa.
You most certainly did. The last time we came, you told Scotty he had been born at Santa Rosa. I sat right here when you said it.
On the final visit, Ethel became angry and revealed what she said was the bitter truth about Scott's mother.
Your mother didn't want you. Your mother had an abortion. Your mother was a slut. Your mother was a whore. And you want to know why she didn't have the abortion? Because it was too late.
She told me that I was a bastard child, that all my mother was a slut, a whore, and that I should have no right to even look for her. So for me to go home and for me to stop looking for her.
Scott and Mary refused to give up. They decided to visit yet another place where Ethel said Scott had been born. A community health center that in 1965 was known as the Woodlawn Clinic.
The very minute that we walked in, I was completely stunned. I couldn't even talk. The feelings that I got from this were just incredible. I mean, it was very of a morbid type feeling, but yet I felt like I had been there before. And everything that in this dream that I had back when I was 10 was coming true before my eyes.
I was scared to death. He held on to me. I held on to him. We both cried all the way down the hall.
I was so happy that it made sense of the dream that I had many years ago.
Sadly, Scott Mers has still not found his natural mother. But through his search, he met a young woman who had a remarkably similar experience with Ethel Nation. Dawnette Barker was adopted in July of 1966 by a childless couple from San Antonio. As a last desperate result, they had approached Ethel Nation after years of trying to adopt through state agencies. Dawnette learned that on the night she was adopted, her parents had to choose between her and two other infants.
We have these two little boys here that are twins, and this little girl over here. Now, of course, you have your choice, but I would prefer that the boys be kept together if that's at all possible.
There were bassinets, and there were children. I think there were 2 twin boys and myself. My parents didn't, because they didn't expect that things would happen so quickly. They just thought they were going to go to see the baby, but at that point, Mrs. Nations told my parents that they could go ahead and take me home that night.
Can?
Yes, absolutely. Honey, is there a problem?
Well, ma'am, we don't have the full 1,700.
I thought that had been settled.
Well, ma'am, we just didn't think we'd be able to take her tonight.
You have some kind of property. Do you have anything that you can sell? How about the boat? What kind of boat? It's all right. We'll work something out.
As payment for Dawnette, Ethel Nation accepted a 14-foot ski boat worth $1,700.
You can go ahead and take your baby home.
When she turned 18, Dawnette began to search for her natural parents. She found that her mother's name was listed as Gloria Cantu. The adoption papers had been notarized by Ethel Nation.
What can I do for you this time?
Dawnette spoke with Ethel Nation several times and was finally told the same story as Scott Mers.
Your mother was a tramp. She didn't want you. She went there to have an abortion, but it was just too late to have one.
I don't understand what's happening.
I told you you shouldn't have been messing around with something like this. You should have left well enough alone.
I really couldn't understand why, or how she could say that. It hurt.
There is no way of knowing how many babies were sold by Ethel Nation, who died in 1991. Scott Mers and Dawnette Barker now suspect that there may be dozens of other young people who, like them, will not be able to rest until they are reunited with their natural mothers. Scott Mers was born on August 5, 1965 in San Antonio, Texas. His mother's name was listed as Joyce Collier. She may have been 22 years old. Scott's adopted mother, Mary, met her once and recalls that she was thin with dark hair and an olive complexion.
It's important for me to find her because there's a certain gap, a certain hole that's inside me that I want to fill. And I think the only way that I can fill this hole is to be whole myself. And finding my birth mother will do that.
If she's out there and she is watching, you know, I just want her to know that I don't want anything from her, and above all, I don't want to hurt her, or, you know, maybe it's something she's never told anyone, or who she's currently married to if she's married, but I don't want anything, no strings attached. I just want to know what happened and how it happened. I would never in any way want to hurt her.
Dawnette Barker's birthday is listed as July 21st, 1966, but she may have been born weeks earlier. Her mother, Gloria Cantu, may have been 23 years old when Dawnette was born. Bo Scott Mers and Dawnette Barker Lucier may have been born in the Woodlawn Clinic in San Antonio, Texas. On the night of our broadcast, several viewers called our telecenter on behalf of Dawnette's birth mother, Gloria Cantu Martinez of San Antonio, Texas. A short time later, Dawnette spoke to her mother for the very first time and learned that Gloria had never intended to give her up, but had been tricked into signing the adoption papers. Dawnette was overjoyed to discover that Gloria wanted to see her as soon as possible. On November 9th, 1992, Gloria flew to Washington, D.C. for a tearful reunion with Dawnette. For mother and daughter, it was an emotional end to 26 years of painful separation.
When I was waiting for her to come out from the plane, a million things were going through my mind. Just relief that it was over, that I was finally where I wanted to be after a long time of looking.
I just couldn't believe it. That it was finally gonna happen. What I always wanted. I've always wanted her. Find her and wondered what she was like. If she was married, if she had any children.
The reunion was made even more special when Gloria met her 4 grandchildren for the first time. Dawnette's dream of having her entire family together had finally come true. Next, a woman stricken with amnesia needs your help in tonight's special alert. Last month, we aired the story of a young man in San Diego, California, who had no idea who he was or where he had come from. In May of 1992, he had wandered into a local homeless shelter, apparently suffering from complete and total amnesia. Doctors were baffled by his memory loss. The only clue to his identity was a Boston Library card which bore the name Pierre April. Update. On the night of our broadcast, a viewer in Canada called our telecenter to say that the young man had once worked for his wife and that his name is, in fact, Pierre April. Pierre soon learned that he has 2 sisters and that his parents live in Lachine, Canada, where his father practices medicine. The next day, they spoke on the phone for the first time in more than 5 months.
It was a very emotional moment. And then I even had to tell him that I couldn't even trust him 100%, that I wanted a package with family pictures in it, and with my birth certificate in it, and anything else he could think of. And he said, okay, we'll send that to you. And then he said, do you remember your mom? And I said, no. And she was listening on the extension, and she burst into tears.
A few days later, the packet arrived. Pierre sat down with his fiancée, whom he met in San Diego, and a friend, to get reacquainted with his past.
It is strange to be told who you are and what you did. I'm someone again. And for quite a few months, I was nobody and nothing.
Shortly after Pierre's story aired, we were contacted by authorities in Richardson, Texas, a suburb of Dallas, about another unusual case of amnesia involving a woman who calls herself Sandra Evans.
Like there's a wall across my brain and it won't let me see the other side. Occasionally a snapshot comes through and I get a glimpse of a life before, but nothing solid, nothing concrete.
On May 14th, 1992, Sandra fainted in a Dallas area bus station and was transported to a local hospital. She seemed to be suffering from total amnesia, and the police were notified.
I did receive numerous phone calls from around the United States, from law enforcement agencies and citizens in general, thinking that they may know who Sandra actually is.
Hi, Linda.
We did follow up on all of the phone calls we received, and we're not able to determine who she actually is.
This photograph was taken the day Sandra was found. Initially, she could not remember her name, and she is still not sure that she truly is Sandra Evans. In fact, the tag on the luggage she was carrying had the name Linda Kennedy on it. Sandra says the handwriting is hers, but is certain the name is not. The strongest clues of Sandra's identity are several photographs found on the luggage. There is one of Sandra as a bride. Another shows two young children. And finally, a picture of a teenage girl, which appears to be a high school graduation portrait.
Yay!
They troubled me. I didn't want to deal with the thought if they could be my children. It was much easier to believe they could be nieces and nephews, because the thought of them being mine and not knowing where they are, not knowing who they are, not knowing what conditions were that they were in was too upsetting.
At this point, Sandra believes her amnesia is a result of some traumatic, perhaps violent experience, and she is haunted by a vague fear of both her past and her future.
I am afraid of what I'm going to find on the other side because something made me forget it. I am afraid that if I've had children, that they won't understand where I've been for the last 5 months. That if my mother must be elderly if this is doing something to her.
Update. Just moments after this story aired in Canada, a viewer contacted authorities there and identified Sandra Evans as her sister Carol Ann Roszak of London, Ontario. Carol Ann soon learned that she is divorced and that the photographs found in her luggage were of her 2 sons, now teenagers, and her 13-year-old daughter.
When I talked to my daughter, I asked her about things that
We put the lottery up.
and
For a
she
change.
said we did everything together. She said we were real close. In fact, the first time I talked to her, it was more like she was the mother and I was the daughter. She was so sweet. She was so excited to talk to me.
Even though the information about her past did nothing to jog her memory, Carol Ann immediately began packing to return to Canada, where her children, her 4 sisters and her brother would be waiting. On October 30th, 1992, a nervous Carol Ann, accompanied by friends she had made in Texas, arrived at the Dallas airport to board a flight that would take her back to her family 6 months after she disappeared.
Oh yes, I'm happy to go home.
Uh-oh.
A little nervous, but I'm happy to be going home.
Okay.
Today, Carol Ann lives with her daughter in Milton, Ontario. She still has no idea what caused her amnesia, but is currently undergoing therapy in the hope that someday she will fully recover her memory. Join me next time. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
What's the track though? Right?
Yeah.
Once that's out of the way, you know.
Slowly.
Okay, Linda. Enjoy your nap.
Enjoy.
Enjoy your nap. I'm going to go and take the tablets. Doc's going to take them at 8 o'clock. Ish. Something like that. I forgot what time I took them before. Shit. You got a biscuit, Al?
This program is about unsolved
Hey, no
mysteries.
thanks.
Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials
They don't
have
help me.
participated in recreating the events. What
I
you're
think
about
someone
to see
slipped
is not
with
in this
Ginger.
broadcast.
I'm here. Have you got the sound
By
on?
his own admission,
Yeah.
Stephen Michalak is an ordinary man who leads an ordinary life. But
Hiya.
No sound on?
Yeah, the sound's on.
Oh. I'm here. Hello? Sure enough, that's part of the stripe up there. Look at the line. Look at the colour. Could it be? Could it not be? Who knows?
Yeah. Do for me. House little meat. rising up in the sunshine. First dream, just dream. Living in sunshine. I am getting somewhere. Ah, yay! Getting somewhere. Slow going, but I'm gonna call it now, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I will be live later on. Lots of love to you all. Take care now. Bye, everybody.